Clean they like riding, but I know that they ain't. Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.
Good morning. I'm about to start heading out for my surgery, but I was reading up on infinites as I was getting up this morning, not being able to have any coffee. And apparently, my objections yesterday were spot on. Just because something is mathematically possible does not mean that it's metaphysically possible. And that's where the objections go. So I figure I'd at least share that with you.
Uh, yeah, I was in the room. I heard it. I wanted to talk, but I didn't want them to get mad at me. Like when
Oh,
I defend Christians, they get really mad at me.
you should have given them some grief over it.
I don't think anybody would have contested if you thought you just didn't think it was the case. Um, Most people only want to get the it's not a contradiction point across.
They just
Uh,
wanted,
well,
uh, they just wanted to argue yesterday. They were trying to white knight one of the worst atheist arguments against monotheism that's ever been on the app, which I think is a dangerous. It would be like if a theist came in the room and said, God exists because of the trees. You guys would be really frustrated if I then spent like the next 30, 40 minutes or to an hour trying to justify that just one assertion.
good luck with your surgery, James.
Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully, it all goes well.
Um, Actually, Albedo, see, I think that you're right about the infinite regress thing, but I still don't fully grasp that's it's so you said like remember you said choose any arbitrary point on the line?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
because
can
Jack had
choose a starting point.
But
mentioned that you could have that you could say you could put an end, like you could technically assign an end value of an arbitrary number, whatever it would be, and it would have an ending. But my point was still that you would never reach the ending, and Jack agreed on that. Or if you were counting from 1 to 5 and you had applied that you had to count infinity in between, you would never reach the ending. But you
Yeah,
can
that's right.
have an infinity that has a starting point, but it's logically impossible to have an infinity that has an endpoint that you can really reach. And so that's why, like, mathematically, you can get away with some things that you can't get away with metaphysically. And I don't think that people got my objections yesterday.
Well, one of the things, and I think this is what kind of makes it hard for people to understand, is we have right now, and then we have the past. If you have an infinite regress, and you can just keep counting backwards indefinitely. Um, Now, the question that theists want to ask generally is, how did we get to here? But what's kind of going on there, and I think this is why I think people get confused, is they're kind of assuming that now is the end point, that you've reached what infinity would be by saying right now. But the idea would be right now can't be the end, because if it was the end, it would mean that you traverse the infinite. You can't traverse the infinite, right? So there has to be the tomorrow and the next day and the
But
day after
I
that.
don't, I don't, I don't think that is what they're saying. I think what they're saying. So I think it's fair to say that right now, given an infinite regress, given the truth of an infinite regress, right now would be the completion of an infinite. So I think at least it's fair for them to um assume that that's what's being proposed. But the problem is they think right now is an infinite. Sorry, right? They think the claim is that an infinite has somehow been traversed, but there's also some finite origin, and that's the hump that they're unable to get over. And that's why Malpass's work on um like trying to explicate the symmetry between beginningless sequences with an end and endless sequences with the beginning is way more analogous than all of these like weird
And
sniper
Himothy,
paradoxes and stuff.
I was trying to grasp what Alex Malpass was trying to get because I went back. I said maybe it's not gibberish. Maybe he has a point. But I think that he's just using a lot of words to talk out of his butt. I don't think that he has a good argument that you can have an actual reachable endpoint in infinity. And I think that's what he's trying to drive home, and
No,
I
but I
just
mean
don't think that's
yeah,
realistic.
that's what I don't think that's the point. So yeah, you kind of made my point. Like I don't think you understand what is being proposed. Like
No, no,
when you say
but I'm
because if
saying
you
is that
saying uh,
that's the argument they were making, Timothy, is that
yeah, but
you could somehow reach this end, and at
yeah,
the same
listen to
time
what I'm
you
saying
can't.
though quickly. Listen to what I'm saying though quickly. It might help. Like nobody is saying that you can end an endless series. I think that goes without saying. That's going to be a contradiction. But the problem is you're looking at this infinite regress through the wrong direction. So your arrow's going the wrong way. Because if it's true, like if it's the case that there is an infinite sequence of causes and effects in the past, right? If that is true, it wouldn't be the case that that's true in virtue of you traveling in the direction towards infinity. It would be the case that some beginningless sequence has arrived at this moment now, and that isn't a contradiction.
Well, no, I'm
The
not saying
completion of
that.
the internet infinite isn't a contradiction.
I'm not saying that's not mathematically a contradiction. What I'm saying though is metaphysically what we observe about the universe, that's just not the case. We don't even
What's
get that from.
metaphysics have to do with observations, though?
Well, because you can't, like, for example, if something can be logically possible but not metaphysically possible, something can be mathematically possible but once again not
I just don't know what
metaphysically
you mean by
possible.
metaphysically possible.
Do you know what metaphysics is, Timothy? Just so I can make sure we're on the same page.
I mean, I have like a concept.
So so think of metaphysics. We try to get you just the simplest thoughts. Think of it as like the knowing substance, cause, identity, time, space. It's everything. It's whether or not you can theorize something, but it doesn't mean that it's true. It's why we have like
Yeah. So what?
premises
I
that are.
was saying. So what do you mean about observations? Why did you say observations? You said we've never observed it, so it can't be metaphysically possible. What does that mean? God can't be metaphysically possible.
No, I think you're missing the point. Didn't say because we haven't observed it, because
Oh,
that would be
that is what you
that
said.
would
But
be
okay.
no, because that would be fallacious. That'd be black swan fallacy. I said everything that we
The what
observe.
fallacy?
Be a black swan fallacy, saying I
Oh,
haven't
black
seen
swan. Sorry.
a black
Yeah, yeah.
swan,
Sorry, sorry.
therefore it's.
I didn't hear what you said.
No, what I said was everything we have observed points to this. Like we understand Planck time, and then right after Planck time, and we have no way to go beyond this point when it comes to the universe and its
Wait, hold on one
expansion.
second. Do you believe that your metaphysic can transcend your observations?
Well, metaphysics are tied to directly to the observations.
But I said, do you
Metaphysics
believe your
is
metaphysic can transcend? So, like, if someone believes in like a world of forms, do you think they have to like literally observe a world of forms?
if you can have the actual information to build the data, then I think you have a good metaphysical explanation. But if you don't have the data, it's like if everything that we have points to things not coming into being spontaneously, and there's a causal principle, and we see even on the universe, it's the taxi cab fallacy in a nutshell, Timothy. If you're riding the taxi cab all the way to the destination on causality, you see the universe that is coming into existence through this singularity. So the next logical step is there's a cause. It's like it's very easy to
Yeah, but
go
why
with.
is that? I don't understand. Why is that incongruent or incompatible with an infinite regress of causes or like causal infinitism? What's the problem?
When we start getting into the infinite regress, we get into the absurdities of infinite and whether or not there can logically or metaphysically be an infinite amount of things. So logically speaking, there could be, but I've never seen a valid and sound explanation, meaning that all the premises are true. I think that having an infinite series of
What do you mean?
events
Well, I
is
mean,
absurd.
when you say true, do you mean like true in the correspondence sense? Like, basically, you never made an observation of an infinite.
No, in the sense that there's actual something there that can back it up. Like, then do you would agree
Like
with me?
what?
Just because something you would agree with me, Timothy, just because something is mathematically possible does not mean that it's metaphysically possible.
It depends what you mean by metaphysically possible. If you just mean like compatible with your metaphysic, then I guess for you could be the
No,
case, yeah.
that's not what I'm. That's not even what I'm asking. I think maybe you and I are talking past each other on this. What I'll do is I have a friend who's really good at the metaphysics. I'll see if he would humor me and come into one of these rooms in the next week, um, because then he could help flesh out some of the distinctions. But in a nutshell, something that's mathematically possible does not mean that it is metaphysically possible. In the same way, something that is logically possible doesn't mean that it's metaphysically possible because you don't know whether or not the premises are true.
So you just mean like by metaphysically possible, you take that to mean if it's like real to you. So if you
No, no,
believe
because
all of
truth
the
is
premises in an argument are sound.
no, because the principle of things and abstract concepts, like when we're looking at knowing, substance, cause, even identity, time, space, Timothy, all those things are metaphysics. That's not independent of me. That's independent of all observed reality.
I mean,
So
yeah, I don't. You're not like. I
there's
don't know.
no
You're not really
metaphysics that's like
explaining that.
I'm just trying to explain.
You're
There's no
asking me if you're
metaphysics
asking me if
that's
I agree. Just be clear. You're asking me if I agree that if something is logically possible, that that doesn't confer metaphysical possibility. And by metaphysical possibility, what you mean, I presume, is that it conforms or doesn't conflict with your metaphysic. Because if not, then I don't
no.
know what you mean.
That's not what I said, Timothy. I just listed off probably I think one of the most soundest definitions for metaphysics I've ever heard.
Yeah, but
Let's
that
look
would be
this up.
your meta. So do you think? Sorry, when you say
Let's
metaphysics, do you think everybody has this kind of like? Do you think there's unanimity amongst um,
so
metaphysics? Do you think everybody
as
has the same metaphysic?
as I pull this up, the branch of philosophy that deals with the first principle of things, including
No, but we're talking
abstract
about. Listen,
concepts.
listen. We're talking about the
One second,
modality here, though.
such as being, knowing, substance, cause, identity, time, space, etc. That's really spot on to what I was
Yeah,
telling
that's
you.
fine. But
Metaphysics
you're
is.
talking about of a modal claim though. You're talking about a category of modal claim. So I'm saying when you say possible, what do you mean? Do you mean it conflicts with your you believe in God, right? So
In
presumably
this
that's going to be part of your metaphysic.
in this particular case, when I'm looking at metaphysics, something that is uncaused can be a real thing, but anything that has uh, presumed or starting points, or in this case, the singularity that led to the universe, that is a cause. The universe wasn't always here, and if I'm doing everything logically speaking, and I'm looking at the causal principles, and I'm not seeing anything metaphysically like coming in and out of existence arbitrarily, then I'm forced to ride that taxi cab all the way to the destination and say I'm going to apply that to the universe, unless you have a good objection for why we should reject that observational data at the universe, why you should hop out of the taxi cab, as it were. I don't hear Timothy if he's talking.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, was I meant? Sorry. Uh, Sorry, I kind of zoned. I'm sorry. I'm like, I just finished doing something. I was like in between deciding to take a nap or not, so I
You
kind of
have
like
to sleep.
Yeah.
zoned out. Yeah,
Take a nap.
sorry.
Naps are so good, Timothy.
Can I? Well, then, can I
Cheers.
ask a question on logical possibility if we've reached a natural break here? Because I've been like torn in my head, and I need a philosopher here to answer me to try to figure this out. And, like
We
every
don't
now and
have
then I get
many of
into this.
those.
Damn it! Well, just keep on pretending to be philosophers would be great.
Yeah, we have
Well, so
pretenders.
technically, anybody who thinks deeply is engaging in philosophy. It's just whether or not you're doing it well.
Okay,
But
so here's the question.
so something can be sound, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's valid. So you can have something that works in syllogism form, but when you look at the real world application, not all the premises are true.
Right, so that it's valid and sound. Right, God, that's not the question here. The question I have is,
Okay.
if I have a statement like, is it logically possible that division is equally as hard as multiplication? And I'm using that phrase because that's a restatement of the P equals NP problem, which is a millennial problem. It's basically the $1 million prizes. If you can figure it out, they'll give you $1 million because we have no proof one way or the other
What does it
if it's
mean
true or
for
false.
it to be hard?
So in other words, like the P equals NP problem is basically, it is
No, I
the
know what
sense
that
of,
is.
yeah,
Rab,
yeah,
you didn't
yeah.
answer my question.
All
When
right, I
you
just
say
didn't want to get
something
too
is
technical.
hard,
Yeah,
when you saying it's difficult for a human to
no,
perform, are you saying it's difficult for a computer to perform?
I'm saying that there would be an algorithm that can solve division in polynomial time. So can I have a polynomial time operation
The
that does
first
prime
question,
factoring, for
what does
example?
this have to
So
do?
that's like an example.
Can you
Because
restate your question with the words that you really want to use, not say,
okay,
is it which one's
sorry,
harder?
let me try. I'm sorry. Let me try then. There's look at the page of millennial problems, the Riemann hypothesis, and many others. All of those have true and false values that we don't know the answer to currently. Is
I'll
it
be right back.
appropriate to say, I'm imagining a logical possible world where the Riemann hypothesis is true? Can I do that? Because I can say those words, but I literally have no way to prove the Riemann hypothesis. And I have no way to deal on, like, if I had something and therefore this would happen, I'd have a proof of the Riemann hypothesis one way or the other. So I don't have that. So can I say logically possible on things I don't actually have a proof to yet?
Can I interrupt to ask a question before you answer Rapscall's question?
Go for it.
I mean,
Yeah,
we're not going to answer Rab's question.
it's just no, just super quick. I just was wondering if the discussion earlier was that Alex Malpass argument that you were referring to was the one about symmetry, that if an infinite uh, past is not possible, then an infinite present is not possible. Is that the argument you were referring to? I'm just trying to
You
clarify.
asking James that?
Well, Himothy, and James were having a discussion.
Um, I'm. I think I made mention of it, and I think
Can you do
James
you,
referred
Oh,
to it as
can you
can
gibberish.
you just
explain?
post? Do you want to just
Maybe.
post the link? I just wanted to make sure that I understood what you guys were
Oh,
referring to.
could you explain it?
Yeah, he's just saying that. Well, when he was just like, he had a discussion with William Lane Craig, who is like a causal finitist, I think. And William Lane Craig was like, they were discussing the distinction between like actual infinites and potential infinites, and William Lane Craig said he has no issue with saying that um, it is the case that like there could be a beginningless, there could be an endless series that has a beginning essentially. So basically, like let's say for instance heaven, like there could be a first moment in which you like gain admittance to heaven, and then there could be an infinite amount of time, or you could be in heaven forever. He sees no issue with that. And like, or Malpass drew some kind of like symmetry from that by saying, well, if it's the case that the future tense proposition, like, and he uses like an infinite, like counting infinitely into the future. So he says, well, if it's the case that I like I will begin counting now and basically never end counting, well, it would be the case that I will count every like positive integer or something. And then And then if that's true, if it's true of that proposition that I will count every like natural number, let's say, then the like it would also be true then, or it could, or he sees no contradiction in the notion that the past tense proposition, the equivalent past tense proposition would be I have counted an infinite or all the natural numbers or something like that, or an infinite amount of numbers, and he sees no symmetry breaker, and like that's I guess the discussion they were having, because obviously William Lane Craig denies one, saying the distinction is actual and potential, but Alex Malpass says he sees no um, like issue with the equivalent propositions or symmetry between the propositions.
But
Yeah,
James,
the
is your
discussion.
argument that that's logically like you accept that from a logic standpoint, but you just think it's metaphysically impossible to have any infinity at all? Just in like, do you mean like quote unquote real life? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Well,
If you can hear me, because I switched my mic, because I'm going to start driving in a minute. But so my main point with Himothy, sorry, this morning was that so you mathematical concepts do exist, and so you could have different types of infinities. But when it comes to when you're applying them metaphysically, that doesn't mean that they're true. So there are concepts in mathematics that aren't obligated to exist in reality. You have to demonstrate that they could. Now, you could have, like William Lane Craig said, a beginning to an infinite. It's going on forever and ever and ever. And you could, like Jack said yesterday, assign an arbitrary end number to that. But because it's going to take you an infinite amount of time to get there, you're never going to reach the end. And that was kind of the synopsis this morning.
So you're just saying they're not logically impossible, then a certain kind of infinity
Yeah,
is
something
metaphysically possible.
yeah, something can be logically
Yeah, I
possible,
understand.
mathematically
That's what you're
possible,
saying.
but just not.
Yeah,
Yeah. But that doesn't mean that the premises are true,
right,
and that means that it's not
right.
metaphysically possible.
Yeah, I guess I'm just not sure what metaphysically. I mean, is that like me saying talking donkey's metaphysically impossible?
So you could say, given what you have as a donkey, that a donkey doesn't have the proper voice
Hmm.
modulator, that a donkey can't just talk now. But you can't say that because developing beings have a talking pattern, that there couldn't ever be a donkey that talked or a donkey that will talk. That's metaphysically possible because we do have things that talk.
yeah, but anyway, look. So the whole argument is on. There's a Q&A on Craig's website where he explains, and he doesn't use that language. Number one. Number two, he outlines 5 points. Number three, the argument is as Timothy. I'm copying James now, but as Timothy recounted it, is actually a slight mischaracterization. So whatever, I'm reading it now. But anyway, thanks for letting me ask the question. I'll go now.
Okay, should we go
Wait,
back?
what was? Sorry, can I just ask really quickly? Sorry to interrupt, but what was what was I mistaken about? I'm not denying that I was. I just was
No,
interested.
no, yeah. So he's just more careful with the language. He's just using slightly different language, and because the language is different, the meaning is different, right? Um, so the part that you, I think, have correct is he's asserting that he actually has no problem accepting a finite future, right?
Is this
Um,
Al
so I think
Malpass
that
or Craig? I'm sorry.
Craig,
Craig,
I
Okay.
think.
Craig,
So.
because Malpass's argument is in order for there to be symmetry, if there cannot be an infinite past series, then there cannot be an infinite future period,
Mhm.
but series. But Craig just accepts that. He doesn't have a problem with that, and he explains why. And
No,
he
he
also
doesn't believe it. He doesn't believe that infinite regress is logically impossible. But he tried to deny his reasoning by appealing to like future perfect tense propositions or like a future perfect account of an endless series, and that's what like the major sort of this or like I guess that was their most substantive disagreement because
Yeah,
Craig, because
because
Alex Malpass wanted to say it's the case that if you count an infinite, um, if you count infinitely into the future, then it is the case that let's take the natural numbers for instance, the set of natural numbers. It is the case that you will count all the natural numbers, but it is not the case that you will have counted all the natural numbers. And Craig seemed to think that it was the case that there was some like entailment between the future tense proposition and the future perfect tense proposition, which is what he was using to deny the symmetry. And I guess if he accepts the symmetry in terms of, well, I guess if it's the case that he accepts the symmetry, then yeah, he can't have an issue with the completion of an infinite, or in quotes, an actual infinite being completed, because, like he said, it's just a mirror of what he does accept to be the case, which is and the ability to count infinitely into the future.
His biggest
Yeah. So
point is not the
hold on, James.
logic; it's the metaphysics.
No. So he explains his objection. He's willing to accept the symmetry, but he also explains how that entails a problem for Malpass. Anyway, if you want, I can I'll back channel you the link.
Yeah, message me, bro.
I have to go though.
Yes,
Thanks
yes.
for
Send
letting me
it to
ask some
me
questions.
as
Sorry, hey Rap Scuttle. Sorry, I promised to be short. Sorry, man.
yeah. Send it to me as well, Brian. I just think that when you read Craig's work, he's definitely giving a metaphysical objection. He's not saying that it's metaphysically possible.
Ride or die. I go hard in the paint, yeah, homie, I'm a saint. Ride or die.